Hello and welcome to the recording of the launch event of Coaching for Collective Transformation. My name is Jonas Gröner. I'm one of the founding members of Coaching for Collective Transformation, and happy that you're here to watch this. We have amazing guests, Karl Steyaert and Jocelyn Ames on, and we discuss topics from like, what does collective transformation mean? How does it relate to social change? How do services like coaching, mentoring, and facilitation figure into the equation? And how, what does it look like in practice? How can we collectively transform ourselves and each other? And unfortunately, on the event, we hit recording just a second after I finished introducing myself, so I'll quickly do that. As I already mentioned, my name is Jonas. I'm based in Vienna, and I work as a coach and facilitator for change makers and activists, mostly in the field of like climate justice and resilience, and also like local community building. And I support them to be more regenerative in their work, find a more steady rhythm individually and together, while kind of having a strong focus on like what are the most meaningful things we can do, so we can have an impact on the world and kind of live out of our vision for a world where all life can thrive. And yeah, that's what I do. I'll leave it at that and hand it over to past Sarah, who will continue with our introductions. I hope you enjoy watching this.
Thanks very much, Jonas. Thanks so much for this landing point for us all. And yeah, just to say, I'm really excited to be here in this space with everybody today. And yes, very curious to see what will emerge. So my name is Sarah Pelham. I am from the UK and currently based in Berlin. And I'm a coach and a facilitator. My background is working in the international peace building sector. At the moment, I largely work with people in the nonprofit sector from many different countries. And yes, what excites me about coaching and facilitation is working with individuals and groups at a deep level to support their self-connection and interconnection, knowing that really important and special things can happen when it comes to social change when we work at that level. Stephen.
Nice. Hello, my name is Stephen Reid and I'm speaking from my home in Totnes in Devon in the southwest of the UK. I'm a facilitator, coach and Ruby and Python developer, currently studying a course on artificial intelligence, a hot topic right now, of course. For many years, I've been interested in systemic change. I was on the board of Greenpeace UK. I worked for the New Economy Organisers Network, and over the past years, I've been teaching courses on Web3 and how it could actually, that technology, crypto technology, could be turned to regenerative purposes. In the last few years, also, I've really come to appreciate the importance of inner change, we could say, and I've benefited from meditation, from psychotherapy, from plant medicine myself, and I'm now passionate about kind of combining that systemic angle with the more like kind of individual approach to achieve collective transformation, to achieve a more equitable, more regenerative world. Thank you.
And maybe let's continue with Karl. Maybe, yeah, just let us know. So how did you get here? What are you up to?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jonas, Stephen, and Sarah for the invitation. Glad to be here with you all. So my name is Karl Steyaert. I'm based currently in Berlin, Germany as well. And let's see, I also, like my colleagues here, am really passionate about this intersection between interpersonal and systemic transformation. And really in a lot of different contexts, everything from individual coaching and counseling, conflict mediation has been a big focus of my work, organizational consulting, and really just catalyzing transformational learning communities of all different shapes and sizes. In terms of like some of the labels that I move with, I'm a trainer in nonviolent communication, internal family systems therapy practitioner, founder of the Cultural Catalyst Network, and I enjoy working on that with Jocelyn, a collaborator in the Hum with Richard Bartlett, and I had the privilege of hosting the Embodying Collective Transformation residencies, which Sarah, Jonas, and Stephen all were a part of, and Jocelyn co-hosted. So excited for this synergy. Those are some of the places where I play and try to co-create. So glad to be here. Thank you. Pass it to you, Jocelyn.
Thanks, Karl, and yeah, thanks, Stephen, Jonas, and Sarah for the invitation. Yeah, my name is Jocelyn, and I'm originally from the UK, but I also live in Berlin. In fact, I'm a few floors down from Karl right now. We're enjoying living together in a residency here for 6 months. And yes, lots of overlap with what Karl said. I consider myself a facilitator for supporting people who want to create a world in which all life thrives together. And so that involves a lot of bringing my background of nonviolent communication and my passion for internal family systems, and maybe more recently, I really enjoy organizational structures that really support a foundation of belonging and trust amongst people such that they can create meaningful work together. And that's, yeah, a lot inspired through the work of microsolidarity and Rich Bartlett's work there. Yeah, very much enjoyed meeting Stephen and Sarah for the first time in Bergerac, France, through the Embodying Collective Transformation series last fall, and Jonas met him at the Microsolidarity gathering last May. So it's great to see how this is all weaving together. Yeah, that's me.
Great. Thanks a lot. And before we go any further into like what this is, what we're up to, we also want to give all of you a chance to check in briefly. And because we're quite a number of people, it's not super practical to do that in the big group. We'll send you into dyads for 4 minutes, and you can just share with your buddy how you're arriving here today at this call. I always find it helpful to just have a more focused, small group interaction in these big groups, so we can kind of land and be a bit more calm in that. Yeah, I think it should work out. There will be one group of 3, but yeah, you'll have 4 minutes, and we'll send a message halfway so you can know how to switch. See you in 4 minutes. Stephen, I think I messed up.
Yeah,
I
no
messed
worries.
up the coast thing.
Well, let me see if there's a room with 1 person in. Yeah, there is actually. So I joined Bergerac.
All right. I will also join. All right, welcome back. I hope that wasn't too brutal of a cut, as it sometimes is with these breakout rooms, especially if they're short like this one. Yeah. Right. So, why are we here today? As Jocelyn and Karl mentioned before, we all of us, Stephen, Sarah, Jocelyn, Karl, and I spent a month, actually Theo as well, who's here, and Birgit, and another few familiar faces. I spent a month in southern France in Bergerac at the Embodying collective transformation residency, which was organized and hosted by Jocelyn and Karl. And yeah, the question there that we were kind of coming together around was how are we called to expand our capacity to care for the well-being of all life. And we were exploring this question through different inner work modalities, and also discussing like our work in the world out there, like what can we do to to turn this big ship around into a more bright path. And one evening, Stephen, Sarah, and I were on cooking duty, and we're kind of chopping veggies in the kitchen, and we're talking about what we do, and like, oh, you're also a coach. Oh, I'm also a coach. Cool. And we're kind of just chatting about our coaching work, and started wondering, like, how can we better serve our clients? How can we better support each other in doing the work that we really love to do, like supporting people to find their calling in this time of transformation in the world, and how can we support them to do it in the right relationship with themselves and their communities and their environment. And one after this conversation, we had another one, and one thing led to the other, and now we're here. And we thought, yeah, a good way to support each other would be to just share a platform that is kind of crystallized around some principles that we call collective transformation. And we're kind of drawing inspiration for that term from Jocelyn and Karl. And yeah, the way the collective will work is it's open for people to join. So if you're also a coach and you kind of resonate with the principles that we talk about, then you can just head to our website, collectivetransformation.coach, and send us an application. And all of the existing members of the collective have equal voting rights, and kind of saying, yes, I know this person, I would like them to join. So once you're a member, you're kind of a peer amongst peers. And there's some other things that we kind of try to do to support each other to continuously grow as coaches, facilitators, and mentors. But yeah, not get into the details so much right now. Yeah, maybe what's more interesting right now is, for me, it's always super interesting, and I hope you're also interested in this. What do we actually mean by collective transformation? It's like one of these bit flashy terms that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I will just briefly open up a frame, and then we'll have Jocelyn and Karl, hear from Jocelyn and Karl what it means to them as our panel guests today. Yeah, so a lot of the challenges we're facing right now as humans can be kind of viewed through this lens of systems of domination, right? It's like, I'm an individual and I need to be better than someone else, and I need to kind of be above them, and I have an advantage out of that and they have a disadvantage. And this is how the world has been working for a long time. This paradigm has been running the show for a long time, and that's why it is deeply ingrained in our bodies, minds, and social systems. It's really hard to, like, the default behavior tends towards domination and separation. So to shift to a paradigm of collectivity and compassion and curiosity and more community that we believe is the way forward, we kind of need each other. We can't figure that out on our own. It's kind of the point, to not do it on our own. So that process of kind of engaging in relationships and community with the purpose of dismantling these systems of domination and being curious about, okay, how does it still live in me, and how can I be more service to my community, and like how can we support each other better to thrive, and how can we invite the people around us into that process as well. This is kind of the essence of transformation for me myself. And I'm really curious to hear from Jocelyn and Karl, like what does it mean to you? Well, how does it live? How does this concept live when the both of you?
Jocelyn, you want to lead us off, or would you?
I can, yeah, and can add some more. Yeah, happy to start us off. Yeah, just first of all, appreciate the first corner post of framing Jonas to riff off. And I think for me, like, yeah, you use this word like domination, and like Rich also used, like, talks about domination and partnership. And for me, that's really the essence of what we're trying to get to with the transformation piece of that. Like, how do we shift from paradigms of domination to paradigms of partnership, cooperation, collaboration? And for me, this, like, where the collective part comes in is like, what are the, well, first I wonder, what are the skills that we need in order to make that happen? Like, why is it not just like we can wake up and be like, I'm going to decide to be in partnership today? You know, it's so ingrained in my own being, like to have like automated mechanisms or reactions to situations where, without even knowing it, I might shift into making decisions that in a way that work for me, but I haven't actually thought of others, or yeah, not being aware of like certain framings of who's got power in the group. And those kind of things are like really important for when it comes to creating collective transformation, because it's yeah, the art of doing things together is about how we do it together. And like, I think that's where collective transformation can really is such a cross-disciplinary, cross-professional, across all sorts of professions, and touches us all in a way. Like, no matter what you're doing, if you're focused on how you're doing it, you can contribute to collective transformation if you're doing it with others. So I'm really excited about what's possible when we're actually addressing transformation together, as opposed to just on our own. Like, from my own background, I really went into yoga and meditation for a long time, and I really appreciated like the value of mindfulness and my inner work, and like knowing myself quietly on the meditation cushion. And I also noticed, like, while I was living in a yoga school, that there were all these like power dynamics going on that contributed to it there still being tensions that just remained unresolved. And I got curious then about like what's going on, and why are we not managing to speak about this? And that's when I got more interested in nonviolent communication, and how, yeah, the importance of, I need to breathe. I'm like just speaking like, I get very passionate and I just keep speaking. Yeah, okay, where was I? Yes, so inner skills for transformation, valuable in a collective, but also the interpersonal. So that's where nonviolent communication became very interesting to me, because that's a lot about like, how can we address, how can we bridge the gap between each other when we have differences, through connecting on the level of something more universal, on the level of our needs. So for example, a need for freedom, or a need for safety, or a need for adventure or nourishment. Which came very much in handy when I started like living amongst more community, or like people with shared goals. I like to volunteer on a lot of permaculture projects in the past. I noticed this was a common challenge of like, we want to do something good for the planet and do something good for the earth, but we all have different ways of going about doing it, end up in conflict about like, shall we have volunteers or not, and all these things. And one more piece I wanted to speak to before I hand over to Karl was like, why collective? Like, why not just try and do this on my own? And I just, in my own experience, realized I can actually learn so much more by having others reflecting back elements of our collective consciousness back to me, and reflecting back parts of me. And I imagine many of us have experienced that either in our like intimate relationships with people, or in friendships, or work colleagues, or in our communities, that, each person is a mirror of something in me, either my gifts or also the things I haven't wanted to see and have rejected. So really this collective transformation aspect for me is about how can I learn to bridge the gap between me, like the inner parts of myself, so I can embrace more the gap between me and the world outside of me. And I just think we're all part of a system, so each part of the system is part of the whole. So on a collective level, like just like a forest is made up of individual parts that are all in relationship to each other. There's a lot to be learned in being able to make transformational change happen as a collective in that way. Like that each of us can hold a piece of the puzzle, but each of us also growing interdependently. I'm going to hold it there and leave it to Karl to continue. Or maybe you want to add anything else, Jonas? No.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Yeah, I don't know that I have so much more content to add to the question, but I'll frame some things in my own way, perhaps. I thought of two different traditions or two different bodies of work that spoke to me. One is thinking of President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and some of the words were, the government of the people, for the people, by the people, and how instead of perpetuating the individualism of transformation of the individual for the individual by the individual, sort of like this hyper-individualist notion that can be so mainstreamed. And in internal family systems therapy, we talk about the cultural legacy burden of hyper-individualism. And instead, I really love this shift in how the three of you are articulating it to collective transformation. So instead, how can we have transformation of the collective for the collective and by the collective? And to me, that's essential if we want to shift. And the other tradition that I was thinking of is the Buddhist tradition, and this idea of the Hinayana and Mahayana schools of Buddhism, which just in brief is this idea of, in the Hinayana tradition, is to find individual enlightenment, versus the Mahayana tradition of the great vehicle is to actually ensure that we support all beings to be liberated. And that to me speaks to the essence of collective transformation. It's not just, oh, can I be happy? Can I have a good job? Can I have a safe home? Can my little sphere be well? But actually, how is it that my ultimate fulfillment, and the idea of like Abraham Maslow's idea that actually my fulfillment, my actualization comes through contributing to the whole, participating in and contributing to the whole. And the last element I'd say is that we as transformation agents, be we coaches, be we facilitators, et cetera, that we ourselves are engaging in transformation. I mean, here we were in Bergerac hosting this Embodying Collective Transformation, and yet Jocelyn and myself and the others hosting, we ourselves were going through the ringer of personal transformation, and that excites me, that we're all in this process of waking up together. So those are some of the things that excite me about collective transformation. Thanks. And thanks for speaking to the resonance. Appreciate the chats. Thanks, Anna.
Any follow-ups on that, Jonas, or shall we move on to the next topic?
Yeah. No, I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day, but we have other topics to touch, so.
Sure. Okay. Well, I might actually just share my screen briefly then. So, coaching for collective transformation. Actually, the name is a bit cheeky or misleading in a way, because actually we're saying that we are interested in offering coaching, mentoring, and facilitation, interested or for people contributing to collective transformation. So yeah, now I'd like to dig in a little bit into these different modalities. So coaching, which as far as I understand it, is a non-directive dialogue practice that is very much more about kind of asking good questions rather than like directly giving advice. The mentoring, which maybe has more to do with kind of advice and kind of directing people in certain ways based on experience and expertise, and facilitation, which is more of a group endeavor. So yeah, I'd love to hear from, maybe let's start with Karl this time. Karl, what does coaching or indeed mentoring, facilitation for collective transformation mean to you, and how would you make the distinction between those different modalities?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. It's interesting because for myself, I really so fluidly blend between different aspects that connect those three words and practices for me. And so I like the practice of looking at the differentiation. At the same time, for me, the main sort of advantages, disadvantages to me really emerge in the moment, whether I'm working with an individual or a group, is really sensing into, right, on the one hand, really trusting the wisdom of the individual who I'm working with or the group that I'm working with, and really eliciting, helping to draw out that wisdom, that capacity, that strength. And so that's perhaps, more of that yin practice of like deep listening, of reflecting back, of enhancing what's already there. And then there is the place, as as you were describing mentoring. Clearly, you're bringing Jocelyn and myself onto this call in more of this role as bringing our own perspective, bringing our own wisdom, which, yeah, typically in coaching, I do much less of, but has its own place, right? Especially if the client is actively inviting that kind of input is one instance, or if we have a strong intuition that, wow, some kind of challenge or insight or something coming from the outside might actually catalyze positive transformation. But I think because our culture on the whole, and this is a gross generalization, but our culture as a whole, I see, is quite young, where there's a lot of, okay, I'm going to be the authority. I'm going to sort of tell, people basically filling the space with their own opinions. I think that practice of really creating a space of deep listening and of honoring and trusting the capacity and wisdom of the other, as you were describing, that the essence of coaching in that non-directive way, to me, is so essential. And similarly with facilitation, how do we make easy rather than thinking we need to control or shape or make something happen, beyond simply really allowing what wants to emerge. And I don't think I'm speaking anything that anyone in this group isn't familiar with, but to me, it is an art form, and it's to me, it's such an inspiring one, because when we're in that flow personally of listening for what wants to emerge and trusting in the capacity of the others, and then only that, in certain instances, bringing in our own voice if it's truly an enhancement. I love that weaving through all of those practices, whether it's coaching, mentoring, or facilitation. Just going to see if there's anything else that comes to me. Yeah, that speaks to the heart of it for me. Thanks.
Jocelyn, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, I have the least experience in mentoring, and yet that's the bit that I'm most drawn to speaking about right now. And when I say actually I have the least experience, in some ways it's not true. Actually, the most experience I've had with having a mentor is actually Karl, to be honest. And yeah, and I'm just reflecting right now on, because Aloysius mentioned something about ancestors, and I just reflected on, probably in the past we used to have mentors much more part of society, and that's not so much present anymore. And I don't know, there's something in me that is changing so quickly, that my grandparents, although they have certain wisdoms, there's something that I wish I had more from them to learn about, hey, how do you get on with people in a way that that feels really good? How do you create good relationships, And I think there's something really valuable about having mentors in this particular type of work, and I really value Karl's experience, for example. And it's not like that Karl knows all the answers, but he does have an awareness of patterns, and that's something that I find really interesting and useful. Where do how can we see things through the framing of power and privilege? How can we see things through a whole system's parts lens? What are how can we look at what might be polarizing in this relationship, or in our group, or in our work? And so just having someone who's kind of been through the system, or been through this experimentation a few times before, is really helpful. I think one con can be a sense, like talking about power and privilege, of like that it's important to also have people amongst me who I can mentor as well, to notice like where I have gifts and strengths already. Otherwise, I'm always thinking I'm just a student. But I'm also really curious about how we can actually create more of a partnership paradigm in terms of mentoring as well, which Karl and I have looked at a bit in terms of like, I'm interested in following a path of getting certified as an MVC trainer, and yet how can Karl be my assessor or mentor in that, in a multi-directional way, that it's not just Karl's telling me, oh, this is good and that's not so good, or you need to be better at that or worse at that, or tone that down a bit, but that it can be like both directional. And that's like really, I haven't experienced that a lot in dynamics where there's sort of a coaching or a mentoring relationship going on. At least I'm not used to that, and I'm still like trying to imagine how that can be. So, yeah.
Thank you both. And I'm wondering if you've got any just final thoughts on what this coaching for or mentoring for collective transformation is really getting at. For example, I trained in a style of coaching called transformative coaching. And you may have your own examples where, and I would say a lot, yeah, at least it's my experience that a lot of the coaching world is primarily focused on the individual and individual transformation, often in very useful and effective ways. But I sense we're kind of like aiming for something at least like a little bit different here. So yeah, how does that coaching for collective transformation change things for you in this context, Jocelyn?
How does it change? How does coaching for collective transformation change the context of? Can you repeat it again?
But just when we say this is coaching for collective transformation, like how would that differ to coaching or formative coaching, or what does that for collective transformation kind of speak to or get at for you?
I'd say like. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, as Karl said, when we were hosting the collective transformation, embodying collective transformation residencies for 3 months, it's like we're opening a space. Like collective transformation is often going into unknown territory, and it is challenging certain paradigm dynamics that exist in a group of people. And when that happens, it, like, as Karl was saying, it like put us through the ringer as well. Like it confronted me with where I was not fully like embodied in that yet, or where I was struggling with letting go of control, or where I was going into blame or taking on much more responsibility and burning myself out in that position. And I think in terms of like what that means in terms of coaching for collective transformation, if coaching, we see coaching as a one-on-one like relationship, then in that frame, I just find it super valuable to be able to have someone who's there and be present with me, who's outside of that context, and help me reflect on what's coming up in me, and how can I come to peace with that, come to terms with that, and take that in as feedback to learn from, and like sort of digest it and continue flourishing as an embodiment of that paradigm I want to live. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think it speaks to the kind of the slightly fuller slogan that we have there: coaching, mentoring, facilitation for people contributing to collective transformation. So for the kinds of people that are involved in such communities and spaces and projects, then to have a coach or a mentor that kind of understands what that is about is could potentially be useful. Yeah, but Karl, any further thoughts on this?
Just going back to what I said before about the by the people or by the collective, for the collective, of the collective, this idea of also, in a sense, this endeavor that the three of you have created by creating this coaching for collective transformation, to me is a manifestation of, the three of you coming together, not to just do something by yourselves, but also not to just do something for individual benefit, but really coming together. So doing something collectively in service to the wider whole. So like that to me, helping people on a path toward, I think, realizing a more fulfilling life, which to me is to belong and contribute to something larger than ourselves. And I don't know that I've seen that occur so often in the framework of coaching, that's made explicit, that intention of helping people belong and contribute to something larger than themselves. So that frame is exciting to me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I think I'm going to pass over to Sarah now to explore another topic.
That's great. Thanks very much. And actually, my follow-up question is to ask you, Jocelyn and Karl, for an example of collective transformation. So this could be something that you have contributed towards, or you've been inspired by seeing others doing. And yeah, to kind of riff off what Karl said as well. Yeah, I see what we're co-creating here with this coaching collective very much as an example of this collective transformation of bringing together different skills and experiences in service of the whole, and being here today with all of you who may be interested in getting involved, either to be coached or to take part in some kind of group process that's facilitated, or also to get involved in the collective. And yeah, I really kind of see what we're doing here as a living organism that's going to take some very interesting shapes. So yeah, just to move back to you, Jocelyn and Karl. Yeah, what comes to mind as an example of collective transformation? And yeah, is there some particular nuance or essence that you want to share and highlight from your example? And whoever would like to go first, please take the floor.
Okay, Justin, I can jump in if you like.
Yeah, happy for you to start. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking one scenario is working with an organization. I won't make it too detailed because I kind of want to keep a certain anonymity for the organization, but a nonprofit organization that I have worked with for a number of years that I see doing really powerful work to prevent sexual violence and domestic violence in the world. And in this organization, when they first brought me on board, the organization was experiencing consistent conflict, factions of groups with people hardly talking to each other, hostility between leadership and the rest of staff, people gossiping, talking critically about each other behind each other's backs, and not offering direct feedback. Anybody ever seen that in an organization that they've ever encountered, or a community they've been a part of? Some of those elements, hopefully not all of them together at the worst, but yeah, and really, in a sense, I would say I brought to bear elements of each of the dimensions that you spoke of, the practices of coaching, mentoring, and facilitation into that organizational context, both with individuals and with the group as a whole. So the forms of support that I offered were direct facilitation of group process and conflict mediation, coaching individuals and groups in developing new patterns and systems of addressing tensions, sharing decision-making and power, etc. So that's a piece that I think is also really interesting in terms of looking at collective transformation, is how do we think systemically, both in terms of assessment and design, when we're helping organizations navigate things more effectively, or communities for that matter. And then third, training and capacity building in skills such as collaborative communication, giving and receiving feedback, etc. And so it's not always the case that I go into an organization and use all of address all those different pillars, but it is, I think, often useful to be able to draw on, whether it's an individual or a team of people going in, to be able to draw on some of those different elements of coaching, facilitation, and mentoring. And so what was exciting to me, and what I do see, is that with those, having that sort of Swiss Army knife of different transformational tools, it was possible for people in the organization to begin having clearing conversations at the individual and group level, to begin to create safe spaces so people could name and work through their tensions, but also then developing new habits and a system for giving and receiving feedback, etc., and then resulting in a healthier and more vibrant organizational culture. So, that's just a little snapshot of the kind of journey that I think ideally comes to bear when we can bring these different modalities to bear on a situation. So that's the snapshot version. Thank you. I'll pass it to you, Jocelyn.
Yeah, thanks, Karl. Yeah, example that I was thinking of just now was a recent group that I've just been helping. Actually, yeah, some people know here. My friend Anya Lutz, she's got this graphic designer's studio, and she has like a lot of people who come by and are like interested in or are graphic designers, but they're all sort of quite isolated, individual, and all of them speak about feeling a bit lonely, especially during the pandemic. And she had this idea after coming to the residency about making her graphic design community, to bring it together as a collective, to try and expand what graphic design can mean for the community and the wider world. And so I just found it interesting, like just simply being able to, as a facilitator, being able to create spaces for people to just literally connect and get to know each other and share about like what are the challenges that you're facing within your industry, what are you enjoying about it. And from that we gathered like all of these like very colorful cut pieces of card, and everyone shared them. We put them all out on the floor and like mapped out what are the kind of themes and thematics, and came up with certain aspects of like what the collective could mean for people. And it's really about like meeting needs together. And they were really curious about how can we do this. They're like, how do we go about creating a collective though, that doesn't end up being just a top-down mission of Anya, the person who's the source, saying what it's going to be and everyone follows. That doesn't feel super alive for what they wanted, but also that they don't get stuck in endless like decision making. And how do they actually, like a lot of them were saying, oh, from our experience, like a bit nervous about collaborative decision making, like collaboration is really hard, a bit like what Karl was speaking to just there, like how much challenge it can be to have, like what happens when you differing opinions or different needs. But yeah, just by being able to share a few decision-making tools and sharing the organizational structure and principles of microsolidarity, about like scales of belonging and about rhythms and patterns of meetings, we were able to, within the 2.5-hour session, set up like a rough organizational structure and put through 8 different decisions about how the organization was going to work. Like, what is our communication channel? What's a rough draft of idea of how we deal with money together? Yeah, what kind of event? How do we arrange our events and planning and things like this? And it was just fascinating to feel the energy in the room. I think that was the most important thing for me. And I realized that people were actually energized after having a meeting because they felt connected through doing it. And that's quite a shift for me. And also that the second thing that I found transformational was that it wasn't from a place of people being like, oh, we have to do this. It was people were able to select what's their field of interest, like, and create decisions and be engaged in creating the organization from their own volition and enthusiasm, which is very different to like being told what your job should be and you have to fulfill that and you're just working for money. So yeah, I think that I just really get excited about being able to facilitate those kinds of ways of people creating an entity or a movement together that supports their whole as being more than the sum of their parts, like the whole 1 + 1 becomes 3 principle. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn and Karl. Yeah, very, very rich answers, and yeah, I think a lot of things that I could pick up on, but yeah, I think just to briefly reflect, I think connection is coming out so strongly there, like what can actually happen when we move into, of course, greater self-connection and connection with other people, and also supporting people to develop the skills or to provide tools that people can really get a handle of, and when we're better equipped with these skills and tools for interconnection and for community processes and structures, yeah, really amazing things can happen, and our kind of visions can really become a material reality. So yeah, thank you so much. So this is the official end of our structured part of the Q&A, and in a moment we will move into, sorry, not our question and answers from us as hosts for Jocelyn and Karl. In a moment, we'll move into breakout rooms, again into dyads, and I have a prompt for you in a moment. But then we'll come back together, and there'll be opportunity for everybody who's participating to ask questions, and yeah, share anything that you're curious about with the group. So my prompt for you is, what's alive in you from this discussion? And by this, maybe it's a thought that's come up, a feelings, sensations, and we'll have 6 minutes in the breakout room, so you can have a 3-minute exchange. So what's alive for you from this discussion? Hello, everybody. Welcome back. In a minute, I know Stephen's going to jump in, but I just realised I'm really curious to hear what people shared in the discussions. If anybody wants to write a tiny bit in the chat about what's alive for you, then yeah, I would be very curious, and I'm sure others would too.
Or even raise your hand. I think if you raise your hand on Zoom, we'll see you, and you can unmute, or we can unmute you. Oh, there is that. Stina.
Yay.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just want to say that I'm really happy to be part of this space today, and just feeling very excited that there are so many like-minded people joined here who are all having this vision of transforming this in a collective way, and focusing not only on the individual but also on the kind of relations that we are all part of, and through that creating systemic change. So I feel very inspired and excited.
Thanks so much, Stina.
Thank you for your comment in the chat there, Karl. So if no one else has anything to share, they do. Marika, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, thanks so much for all the interesting contributions. We were discussing something that I mentioned that I'm actually curious about after hearing all of the questions and answers so far. And I've come from much more of a political activist kind of context, specifically feminist activism. And yeah, you all slightly alluded to a little bit of, Jonas mentioned systems of domination, and Jocelyn mentioned privilege and power. And yeah, I guess in the political space, we're also working for collective transformation, but in a different kind of way, much more looking primarily at power and primarily at these systems of domination. And I was just wondering how this political perspective or these views plays a role in the way you work and what you're working towards, and how, yeah, you connect then these, like, I guess, yeah, you mentioned working with individuals and working with organizations. How that shows up in the work you do, and what you aspire to there or wish for there. Thanks.
Thanks. So,
happy to speak to that for a second, Stephen.
Yeah.
The way I like to look at it is like there's a time for like systemic analysis of what's wrong and the systemic kind of systems of oppression that exist, and that's very useful. It's a very useful thing to do. Because it tells us a lot about like, where am I positioned, what can I do, how can we be strategic about our collective actions, especially in political activism, or even if it's like founding a social business that has like the goal of having some impact. And then there's also a moment of like, okay, how do these systems out there in the world also live inside of myself, and how do I reproduce them in everyday interactions? And this second aspect is really what this collective transformation thing is about for me. Like what it aims at is like, what is the direct experience of me reproducing patriarchy, or being I don't know, behaving in a way towards a person of color that that is kind of telling them they're less than me, because there's certainly moments that I do this, like this, these systems, they're so deeply ingrained, they live in us in a way. And this work of collective transformation for me is really about like getting to grips with what that moment is like when I can shift out of that into a partnership, and really getting better at that move. I don't know, this energetic mind trick, Jedi mind trick move of kind of recognizing, oh, I'm doing this, I'm reproducing this thing, I have this whole analysis of it that's not important right now actually, but I know it's important because of this analysis maybe, but what I need to do right now is be present with the person and see them as like a whole being with goals and dreams, and also like a desire to contribute and needs and feelings, and how can I kind of look for that. And I don't know, this is how I see them plugged together, both of them. If this I don't know if this answers your question, but this is what came alive in me when I heard you talk about this. Yeah.
You want to follow up on that, Marika, in some way?
No, yeah, super interesting. Yeah, if anyone else from the panel also, or the group wants to share it, yeah, I think it's great connecting these different levels actually together, and I understand it better now.
Let's at this point, let's kind of open it up to as a whole group discussion. So if someone, there we go, Michael, please go ahead.
Hi folks, this has been really cool. So I was lucky enough to get matched with Jocelyn in the last room, and this is kind of building on what we talked about, and then the past question, which I thought was like really nicely related to this. Let's say that you want to accomplish some goal that you think is good and important, right? And so you bring together an organization to accomplish that, but it has some problems, right? The thing that I'm really curious about, based on my own experience and things that I've heard, is like, to what extent can you go into an organization with a sort of systems approach, right, which is in some way very like clinical and objective, but then bring the human elements of like understanding people, kind of teasing apart these dynamics and getting people on board, getting people to kind of play ball with this and make the organization more healthy and therefore more productive toward whatever that goal is? And to what extent is it something that is kind of just inherent and requires, some amount of turnover or something to find the people who are willing to play ball? Like, can you elicit this from people successfully, frequently, or do you kind of have to just like tinker until you get the right mix of people who can sort of like work in this more healthy dynamic? Because I feel like in my own experience, I have tried to reach people, and I think a lot of this had to do with like my own ability to tease this out of people not being that great, but it did seem like in some cases there just wasn't really a path to success for me. Maybe this is too cynical, or maybe it's right in some way. I'm interested to hear what the experts think.
I think I could speak to that a little bit. I had the experience of founding a non-profit, which is now a worker cooperative. And so we made that transition from something that was a more traditional company structure that I was at the top to something now where all of me and my colleagues have equal rights and responsibilities over that organization. And on one hand, we lost a couple of people along the way that that were very comfortable working in that more hierarchical structure. That's what they wanted. When we were like let's become a worker co-op, they were just like, no, like two is not what I want or need at this point in my life. And maybe it is now. Maybe they might have had particular reasons why it just wasn't for them at the time. So I think that working in these kinds of structures isn't necessarily for everyone all the time. But for me also, I certainly went through a hugely transformational process from becoming founder to colleague, and sometimes feeling that oh, what have I done? And like, you don't think this person's doing it properly. And like, but it was an incredible journey for me to see how, a humbling one, to just witness that, yeah, people have all kinds of different ways of doing things. And just because they're not doing things in the way that like I might do them or I might want them done, doesn't mean they're actually like any less effective in the long term, especially as people start to specialize and inhabit those different roles and start to develop the real expertise and experience of, okay, what's really required here. Yeah, it has ended up being a very beautiful process of humility and letting go. And now I love it. I love my feel this working cooperative feels like a family, and it's one of the greatest joys of my life, actually.
Very cool and encouraging.
I might just offer a really brief, if I could, just response also to Michael. It's in alignment with what Stephen was saying. Is I do think that hiring, and in other words, like both hiring and recognizing when it's time, when someone isn't a fit, is certainly one element that, as Stephen said, there are maybe some people who fall away, and then there's also another dimension. So there's kind of this whole question of membership, or sort of what is the membrane of either admitting people or letting them go is one. And then another can be really the question of onboarding. What kind of training, what kind of capacity building can happen to really help people upshift or get more capable of operating in a new paradigm. And then third is, what are the systems? What are the ways that we can create a scaffolding that actually helps people who might otherwise individually not be that capable of operating in, if you want to say, a teal structure or in a cooperative structure, and helping them, the systems bearing more of the load. So I think all three of those dimensions kind of come into play. And so just another kind of way to say perhaps the same thing.
Yeah, thanks, Karl.
Yeah.
Can I also actually jump in here? Yeah, so I think this question of what it means to come into an organization as a facilitator and try to encourage change in a particular way. It makes me think of an example actually with Marika and myself when we entered an organization and did a piece of work with the board of an organization that was nearly all male. And the work that we were doing about the work that we were facilitating was, how can this organization become a much more inclusive organization? And yeah, so we had that kind of inquiry of what is it like to women coming to speak to this predominantly male group about this. And what I think what we both found really important was giving space for the personal and the space for people's personal reflections about what inclusivity means, about gender identity. And giving space for the interconnection. So really not trying to, in terms of domination, not trying to force people within an organization in a particular direction, but just holding space for dialogue and exploration, respectful exploration to take place. And yeah, maybe people were also on their start of their journey about what an inclusive organization might look like, but I think we definitely saw an opening up of space for that. And that really excited me as a way of working.
Thanks, Sarah. I see, Michael, you've had your hand up for a little while, so go ahead. Yeah.
Hello. It's always good to listen. I wanted to thank everyone for being a living example of something that I have struggled with, and both individually and in groups, to coalesce into an agreement that can then go forward. And so this, if you will, life stage, if there's a cycle of a collective going through different life stages, the jumping into an agreement, the moving out of dating into steady dating is an important transition, or even you could say in early marriage. And so it's inspiring in many ways. It's also one of the things that I find confusing about the space is that the word freedom can be overapplied to a million different things. The word collective can talk about many different sizes of collectives, and they have very different properties. And many of these villainous institutions that we might think of as villainous see themselves also as collectives. And so there's this question for me of in speaking to, you know, coaching collective action, is there a size at which you feel you're operating? Is there a particular area of competence? Where do you think the sweet spot is for this group? I've already jumped, you know, thrown my application in, but I find myself wondering, you know, is it a call to an open adventure, or is there really a kind of, we know we want to land here, we want to play in these ways, and this is where we think we'll bring competence that others don't already have?
Some of what you were saying around size and scale made me think of the microsolidarity work and paradigm. Is that something you're already familiar with? Michael? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe Jocelyn would like to say a few words on that. I would invite Jonas, but you're also very welcome. I think we're not hearing you, Jocelyn. But you don't. It was just strange because you don't seem muted. No, we still lost your audio. Okay, well, what? Jonas, do you want to pick that up then, whilst Jocelyn?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I have a clarification question, Michael. Are you asking about this specific collective? Are we aiming for a certain size, or do we have a clear picture of? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So no, it's very much an open adventure, and let's see what happens. Our goal with this was to keep it as like a minimum viable structure type experiment, and to just see what emerges. We have set up like a collaboration agreement that is very basic, and that kind of covers all of the necessary bases. But other than that, it's really up to everybody that is in it to shape it and to see how we can what we can make of it. And that's really it.
Of course, there are now several kind of international coaching bodies, International Coaching Federation, the EMA. What's to remind me of the meaning of this acronym?
The European Mentoring and Coaching Council.
EMCC, there we go. Yeah. So I mean, like, who knows? In principle, it could grow to kind of be an international body with like thousands of members. That's like one end of the spectrum, and on the other, it might feel appropriate, or the interest might be niche enough that it's just like, you know, a handful of us. But I'm as one of the co-founders, I guess, I'm certainly open to it achieving some scale, on the basis that, well, one, I think these modalities have a lot to offer the world at this time, and secondly, that at least so far as the coaching goes, what I see in coaching, it's so much of it is very individualistic, and of course that's a part of it, but like, I think like we and probably others, you know, are like attempting to point a slightly different way forwards here, to offer a different kind of flavor that says like, yes, let's talk about your hopes and your dreams, and like and how about mutual flourishing and the well-being, the happiness of and the health of the people and plants and animals and communities that you're embedded in and that you find yourself around. And I'm also sure that many coaches are doing that work well, but yes, it feels good to kind of just be foregrounding that in
And just to add as well, one thing that we would really, really love and really want is a really diverse collective. So to be bringing diverse skills, experiences and backgrounds to our collective and across a huge range of identities to reflect the world that we live in, and also to be at full service of the diverse people that we want to be working with as well.
Nice one. Okay, so Lucius, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to something. I could feel Jocelyn's excitement around like mentorship, and I wanted to share something that I do in my life that I encourage other people to do in theirs. And I do a lot of work in like restoring matrilineal governance through my own behaviors, so they ripple out. And one of the things that's happened because of colonization is we've been separated generationally from passing down and teaching. And then power constructs and dynamics have separated our ability to teach across like age or things like that too. I mentor up and down, and I am mentored up and down. So I have young people who I mentor and they know it. We're in consensual dialogue. They know, hey, I'm being mentored by this human. And then I have young people who know that they are mentoring me. And in the same swing, I have elders who are mentoring me and elders who know that they are being mentored by me. And in that weaving, just a lot of magic occurs. So I wanted to share that as a practice.
Wow, sounds incredible. And like I certainly felt the in earlier stages of my life the lack of mentors. I'm more used to articulating that as the lack of elders in my life. But that gives me something new to think about, actually, that actually it's more about just mentors in general. And why not learn from those younger folks? Sure, there's plenty that I can learn, even from the very youngest. Babies are some of the best teachers that I've come to think of it. So yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective. That's really valuable. Anyone got a follow-up thought or question from that? Yeah.
Completely unrelated, but thank you all for a wonderful event. What's your dreams? Like, if you're going to look back a year from now or even 5 years from now and like, yeah, we've absolutely smashed this, what does that look like? What were you really hoping for and entered into this?
I've just spoken, so I'll let Jonas or Sarah tackle that in the first instance.
Yeah, I also feel like I've talked a bunch. Sarah, why don't you?
What's your dream, Sarah? What's our dream?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I was like, right, hopefully Jonas and Stephen are going to take it. What's my dream? My dream is a really rich, diverse network of people interconnected and coming together, skill sharing, collaborating, working with really diverse community groups, social movements, activists, public organizations, non-profits, businesses that are committed to collective transformation, to systems change, to building a planet that works in service of us all. Yeah, I think that would for me feel something that's, yeah, I could be really, really excited to be part of, something that's, yeah, continuing to evolve as well. And I think you want to add to that, Stephen?
Well, I'm just feeling some curiosity in this moment of how many people on this call are coaches, mentors, or facilitators. maybe you can like raise your do a Zoom hand raise. Oh yeah, or a real life hand raise that works too. Okay, so yeah, quite a few. So I mean, do I dare to ask how many of you would actually consider being part of coaching for collective transformation, or actually alternatively, like maybe you're already part of some kind of coaching collective or a body that plays a similar role. Anyone with anything to share on that topic?
I know I can speak that I would absolutely love to be a part. I think there's just such power in community when we're also aligned with the similar intentions. And yeah, what exactly that's going to look like in flow, that's fuzzy for me as well, but I think that's okay. I think that's kind of the excitement of it. And I know just in kind of the coaches in my network, we've already been talking about starting some sort of a community, just for the same reasons. Just on one hand, just to have like the space for collective support and just belonging and holding one another, but also to sort of provide kind of a hub for like, you know, all these other little projects that can come out of it, potentially for professional growth, potentially for like coaching circles, just for, you know, academic stimulation. I just feel there's so many, you know, ways it can branch off and flourish. So I think this is an exciting idea. I'm glad to see it's taken off.
Thank you, Chris. So we're just 1 minute from the allotted closing time. So does anyone have any final burning thoughts, questions, comments that you want to share? Okay, well, in that case, I just want to say a huge thank you to Karl and Jocelyn for so graciously attending and sharing your wisdom with us today. Thank you to everyone else that has attended and participated in the dyad and offered your thoughts in the chat and these questions and comments in this last part. And thank you to Jonas and Sarah for that matter as well. It's been a pleasure to co-create this baby with you, and I'm excited to see where it all goes. I think that it has been extremely kind of just like, oh, what's the next best thing to do, you know, so far. So it's like we haven't absolutely not got like this, like, you know, 1, 5, 10 year strategy of this is where we want it to be, and like maybe that will come, but so yeah, so far I've certainly appreciated working in that very immediate and emergent way. It's got us this far at least. So okay, so a couple of websites. So collective, just going to drop the collectivetransformation.coach site in the Zoom chat. There, if you're a coach, mental facilitator, someone, there is a join the collective link that will then take you to an application form that you are so welcome to check out, fill in. And let's see, so we were thinking about like experimenting with this very nifty app called gather.town as well. So well, I'm going to jump in there anyway, at least. So this is kind of like a mini like virtual world where you have like a character that you can kind of like walk around and like bump into each other, and so it's still video chat, but it's like it has quite a different feeling to it than just being in a Zoom room together. So let me just find the link for that as well. But yeah, I see we're now past time, so this is very much kind of extracurricular. So if you need to go, yeah, wishing you a good day, night, evening, whatever's going on for you. If you've got a few more minutes, hang around, and I'll put this Gather Town link in, and we can try something a little bit different.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yep. Thanks for being here and contributing. It was a pleasure.